Dear students, as you know that in our previous lecture we have learned about aggregate demand, and today we are going to learn about relationship between income and aggregate demand. There is positive relationship between income and aggregate demand. There is positive relationship between income denoted by Y and aggregate demand denoted by AD. It means that when income increases, this arrow shows increase in income, it leads to increase in aggregate demand. Or when income decreases, this arrow shows decrease in income, it leads to decrease in aggregate demand. Means both are moving in same direction. Now, first we will show the relationship between income and aggregate demand in the form of aggregate demand schedule. Aggregate demand schedule, which means that when we show different values of aggregate demand at different levels of income in the form of table, it is known as aggregate demand schedule. जब हम different values of aggregate demand लेंगे मुख्तलिफ इनकम लेवल पे, जो हम दिखाते हैं इन द फॉर्म ऑफ टेबल की सूरत में दिखाएंगे, तो उसको हम कहेंगे एग्रीगेट डिमांड शेड्यूल. पहले कॉलम में हम लेंगे डिफरेंट वैल्यूज ऑफ इनकम y, और दूसरे कॉलम में हम लेंगे डिफरेंट वैल्यूज ऑफ एग्रीगेट डिमांड. एग्रीगेट डिमांड AD, और हम टू सेक्टर इकोनॉमी लेंगे, टू सेक्टर मॉडल लेंगे जिसमें एग्रीगेट डिमांड होता है कंजप्शन expenditure by household, C is consumption expenditure by household, and I investment expenditure by producer, by investor in business sector. Suppose the values of income, we will take the hypothetical values of income 0, 10,000, 20,000 and 30,000. Suppose the aggregate demand is equal to 5,000 when income is 0. उसको हम बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे. Why aggregate demand is 5,000 when there is no income, how it is possible. लेकिन पहले हम दिखाएंगे aggregate demand schedule, aggregate demand करो, उसके बाद हम डिस्कस करेंगे why it is so, ये कैसे मुमकिन है. When income reaches to 10,000, when income increases to 10,000, suppose aggregate demand is equal to 15,000. And when income further increases to 20,000, जब income फिर से increase हुआ 20,000, हमारा जो aggregate demand का value है, let us take it equal to 20,000. And when income further increases, further rises to 30,000, suppose aggregate demand at that level of income is equal to 25,000, consisting of consumption expenditure by household and investment expenditure by producer, by business sector. This is aggregate demand schedule. Now we will draw a graph of this aggregate demand schedule to get aggregate demand curve. On horizontal axis, or we can say on x-axis, we take the values of income y, and on vertical axis, or we can say on y-axis, we take values of aggregate demand denoted by AD, and values of income are 0, 10,000, 20,000 and 30,000. And values of aggregate demand at these different levels of income are, when income is 0, it is equal to 5,000, 15,000, 20,000 and 25,000. First we will draw a 45-degree line which divides this diagram into two equal parts, this area into two equal parts, showing the values of aggregate demand equal to income. इसका ये मतलब है कि जो भी पॉइंट लाई करता है ऑन दिस 45 डिग्री लाइन पे, वो हमें शो करता है कि जो एग्रीगेट डिमांड है, जो इनकम है, वो एग्रीगेट डिमांड के बराबर है. इनकम इज इक्वल टू एग्रीगेट डिमांड. Now we will get the curve of aggregate demand curve. When income is 0, aggregate demand is 5,000. This point shows aggregate demand equal to 5,000 when income is equal to 0. Now when income is 10,000, aggregate demand is 15,000. This point. When income is 10,000, this point shows income 10,000 and aggregate demand equal to 15,000. And when income is 20,000, aggregate demand is equal to 20,000. This point shows aggregate demand is equal to 20,000 and income is also equal to 20,000. Now when income is 30,000, aggregate demand is 25,000 less than income. This point shows aggregate demand equal to 25,000 when income is equal to 30,000. This point A, B, C and D. By joining these points we will get a curve that is known as aggregate demand curve. This is aggregate demand curve. To get the exact clear aggregate demand curve, for that we have to make use of scale. So I will suggest you here to make use of scale while drawing any diagram, any graph, so that the diagram will be more clear. Now up to this point, aggregate demand is greater than income. Aggregate demand is 5,000, 15,000, income is only 0 at 10,000. Aggregate demand is greater than income from this point onward, that's point C. It is a point of equilibrium. Income is 20,000, aggregate demand is also equal to 20,000. And beyond this point, aggregate demand is less than income. Aggregate demand is only 25,000, income is 30,000. This point shows aggregate demand is less than income. This point. Now here are some important pointers that how it is possible that when income is 0, aggregate demand, consumption expenditure and investment expenditure is 5,000. This is possible, it mumkin hai. That is, if there is no income, उस सूरत में जो प्रोड्यूसर होगा, उस सूरत में जो हाउस होल्ड होगा, वो बोरो करेगा मनी फ्रॉम द मनी लेंडर, फ्रॉम या लोन लेगा फ्रॉम द बैंकर्स, या उसके पास जो पोस्ट सेविंग्स होगा, पहले से जो सेव किया होगा मनी, उसमें से कुछ पैसा वो खर्च करेगा अगर उसका करंट इनकम 0 के बराबर है। इसी तरह जब इनकम 10,000 है, एग्रीगेट डिमांड इज 50,000 मोर देन इनकम, इस सूरत में भी यही है कि जो प्रोड्यूसर होगा, जो हाउस होल्ड होगा, वो बारो करेगा मनी फ्रॉम बैंकर्स, फ्रॉम मनी लेंडर्स, या जो उसके पास पोस्ट सेविंग्स होगा, बचा हुआ पैसा होगा, उसमें से कुछ पैसा खर्च करेगा। इसलिए ये मुमकिन है कि जब इनकम 0 होगा या कम होगा, एग्रीगेट डिमांड पॉजिटिव होगा या ज़्यादा होगा। और जब इनकम होगा एग्रीगेट डिमांड के बराबर, उसके हम इक्विलिब्रियम पॉइंट कहते हैं। उसके बाद जो इनकम इंक्रीज हुआ है लेकिन एग्रीगेट डिमांड उतना इंक्रीज नहीं हुआ है, यहाँ पे एग्रीगेट डिमांड कम इंक्रीज हुआ है, यहाँ पे इनकम 30,000 इंक्रीज हुआ है, एग्रीगेट डिमांड होना चाहिए 30,000 या उससे ज़्यादा, लेकिन एग्रीगेट डिमांड उससे कम है, क्योंकि जब इनकम ज़्यादा इंक्रीज होता है, देयर एट हायर लेवल्स ऑफ इनकम, जो हाउस होल्ड्स होते हैं, जो इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं, वो कुछ पार्ट ऑफ इनकम जो होता है वो सेव करते हैं। It means that at higher levels of income, some part of income is saved, which is not spent or which is not invested. That is why that higher levels of income, aggregate demand falls short of increase in income. That is why beyond this point, the aggregate demand curve lies below this curve, 45-degree curve. And up to this point, aggregate demand lies above this 45-degree curve, showing aggregate demand greater than income. And beyond this point, equilibrium point, this aggregate demand curve, it lies below this 45-degree line, showing less aggregate demand as compared to increase in income. This was all about relation between income and aggregate demand. I hope you have got it. Thanks.